Yeah, I think you're sharing something that I believe strongly in is that our greatest growth comes in times of discomfort. And we really our souls don't really expand. We don't really find our true nature in comfort and in that safety that so many people I think are really searching for, is to kind of feel safe and comfortable, because there's this real genuine fear of being able to, face uncertainty, face the unknown, fear of our own death. That's why, um, I think the blessing in being able to face our own mortality, memento mori, is that you remember that our experience in this body is temporary, and we can really learn a lot about who we truly are when we're faced with those moments that challenge us, that we have to discover ourselves. And I think the connection to the divine is like living that true sense of what our calling is and being in that flow that exists in life. I think we have tremendous capacity for resilience and courage when we're connected to God. Whatever you view as God, right? To me, I feel like God is everything. God is nature. God is universe. God is connection to everything with love. And you feel it. And when you're not living that authentic self, there's a feeling a kind of shame and emptiness. There's low energy experiences of frequency of like depressed mood and real discomfort, because I think that's designed for us to push something new into creation, right? It's like designed to get us unstuck. And so you're speaking about these stories, one for you personally, but also, cancer or any kind of medical crisis can really force us into that transformational state. So I completely understand what you mean when people say it can be a blessing. But I want to stay in cancer because this is your area of expertise medically. And you don't provide generally the conventional advice. You said it right from the onset that there's something distinctly different from medicine and healing. But cancer rates have skyrocketed. Um, Seemingly healthy people in their 30s and 40s are now developing this diseases that were once reserved for the elderly. And most oncologists focus solely on treatment protocols. They push genetics, um, pharmaceutical interventions. I want to get a sense from what you believe is the real driving force behind our cancer epidemic that the medical establishment is either missing or unwilling to address head on.
So part of during COVID allowed me to go back to school essentially and complete a fellowship in integrative medicine. And for me, that became integrative oncology. And I want to explain a little bit about what that entails, because I think it's important to this discussion. So integrative medicine was a term coined by Dr. Andrew Weil at the University of Arizona. And it sort of speaks to two quotes that I really love from Hippocrates, is one of them, who's the father of medicine. And he said that the natural healing force within us is the greatest healing force in getting well. And so integrative medicine is about enabling that inner capacity. The body is very intelligent when it acts out for attention, and it's because something is off balance. And so it's our job to sort of, and this is why I feel really strongly about the word choice that's used when it comes to cancer. There's a sort of belligerence, and I understand it. And this is sort of like cancer being a blessing. We have to be able to learn to hold paradox, where yes, it's going to cause a lot of anger and resentment and fear. And that's important to express that and to feel that in a healthy way. But when that's all that society is sort of pushing at you, when that is the messaging that's coming at you, when all of your energy and your attention is in this very negative frame of mind, you tend to forget that cancer is one of those sort of rare diseases that it's not necessarily, yes, there are certain cancers that we know are triggered by a external vector, like some sort of like H. pylori can lead to stomach cancer, for instance. But cancer itself is your own body gone awry. Your cells have suddenly gone rogue. And so when you're directing and you're living in a space of anger and fear and resentment and hatred at all times, and your entire bandwidth of energy is in the sympathetic overdrive, then what do you think that's going to do? When your body is acting up, it's sort of like a little child. Are you going to yell at that child? Are you going to punish that child? Are you going to self-flagellate? What will you do? And it's like in those moments is when your body is actually begging for attention, for love, starved of every sort of positive emotion, relaxation, peace, joy. And instead, we're doing the opposite, not just individually, but collectively as well. So that is Hippocrates. And then the modern, so going back to integrative medicine, the modern sort of father of medicine was a gentleman by the name of William Osler, Sir William Osler from England. And what he said was that it's more important to know the person who has the disease than the disease that the patient has. Said it more poignantly than that, but to that effect. And so here we have it again, another theme that integrative medicine plays to is that we have to approach the individual in a very holistic sense. And so that you're not just speaking about what's physically going on, but that there are mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual components to what eventually became imbalanced. And so other sort of tenets of integrative medicine is that it's very collaborative. We're on a team. I think medicine has become very prescriptive, very hierarchical, and you saw that very much so with COVID. Another aspect of integrative medicine that I love, that it's open-minded, that it's inquiry-driven, and you saw that shut down completely during COVID, where sort of question asking was tantamount to conspiracy theory. So these are the sorts of things that integrative medicine does really well, as including the fact that the most natural, least invasive interventions are preferred. Now, obviously there's a place and time to use, like herbs versus some sort of like radiation or some heavy hitter. But when you go in with that mentality, you're not sort of just jumping the gun to like just medicating everyone or pathologizing everything. So when you look at integrative oncology, what does that sort of mean when you take integrative medicine and you shine that light in the world of cancer? I want to point out something really important that most people don't know, because it's not sort of well publicized. And that is when a cancer diagnosis hits, I often just hear like, oh, bad genes, bad luck. And genetics, absolutely maximum in terms of the percentage that can be attributed to genetics is 10%. And that's an overestimation. I would say it's closer to 5% or potentially even less. And this is why you'll see, identical twins. Why does one eventually develop some sort of horrific disease and the other doesn't? And that's because the presence of a gene is insufficient to affect physiology. That gene has to be expressed. It has to be on. And that's when epigenetics comes into play. And so you are very much affected by your lifestyle and your environment. And so when you look at cancer and you consider the fact that, and I think this is an underestimation, but we'll go with sort of the NIH, WHO, CDC sort of numbers, that about 50% of cancers are preventable. And that's to say your lifestyle choices. And I think we need to get a little bit more comfortable with radical responsibility as well, and not make that synonymous with blaming anyone. There's something very empowering about saying, hey, if 50% of cancer is preventable, then that means that maybe I can do something about it. I don't have to just, throw my hands up in the air and say, hey, tough luck. And so I think that's something that we really need to talk about. And integrative oncology really does a tremendous job at pointing out the sorts of modifiable risk factors. And so I brought some statistics that I wanted to share with you. And I'm just focusing on a few statistics that I thought were interesting and that anyone can change in their lifestyle related to breast cancer. And so I'll just go down this list of 5 or 6 statistics. Women who breastfeed are at 30% less of a risk for developing breast cancer. There is a 40% decrease in all-cause mortality if women who are diagnosed with breast cancer are in the higher echelons of physical activity post-diagnosis. And we know that physical activity literally helps every single disease and every single marker out there. Females with a history of breast cancer who fast overnight, so meaning from the time they complete the last morsel, a dinner or snack, to breakfast, women who overnight fast for less than 13 hours, that is associated with a 20% increase in cancer death. The breast cancer risk in Japanese women increases. Japanese women who have immigrated to the United States increases with how long they have lived in the United States, meaning that their diet changes, their exposures change. It's amazing how within one generation, these women suddenly have the rates that are comparable to the Western world. Women who sleep less than 6 hours had a 100% increased risk of developing breast cancer. Night lights. And I made a post on this that was actually very popular on Twitter, and this is likely related to melatonin release, but the women who are exposed to the most amount of artificial night light have about approximately 15% increase in breast cancer risk. And then my favorite, given present company, is the long-term use of SSRIs leads to higher breast cancer mortality. And so as you can see, these are pretty astounding numbers. We're not talking about 2%, 5%. Every single statistic I gave you was double digits. And these are all things that, other than the breastfeeding, which we don't always have control over, everything else is you can change this. So that's one thing I love about integrative oncology, and I'll pause there.